Welcome to the channel, everyone. My name is Nick. For those who are new to the channel, hopefully by the end of this video, you do become a subscriber. So a lot's been happening around Hedera, and I do think that this is really kind of hinting at 2025 being a massive year for not only crypto, but also for HBAR. Now, if I did say that to you, you probably wouldn't believe it because the last few weeks have been pretty bearish around crypto. And even if we go all the way back to the candle wick on the 12th of January, ever since then, it's been nothing but downtrend on the price action around HBAR, which is starting to, affect a lot of people. We've been seeing a lot of negative overall comments and engagement around this space. There's not been a lot of positive discussions happening. But this is also happening at the same exact time where we are starting to see so much positive moves happening around the fundamental side of things. Like, for an example, institutional grade adoption is heating up more than ever before. Regulatory moves are happening in a positive way than ever before. I mean, what's going on around crypto right now is actually very bullish, and it's actually very exciting for a lot of these utility-based projects like Hedera. Now, on top of that, we go back and we actually look at the Q4 2024 report that recently just dropped by Masari Crypto. And if we actually look at this is the state of Hedera, Q4 of 2024. Now, since Q4 of 2024, a lot has happened. I think most of the market has been pretty bearish for the most part until something positive does happen around price action. But if we actually look at this breakdown, we have key insights. HBAR circulating market cap increased 375% quarter over quarter to $10.3 billion. Now, a big thing that actually did help that as well was the fact that there was a lot of HBAR released. Because if we actually go back over to Hedera, we could see that 42.21 billion of HBAR's total supply is out there, which is about 84.43%. But also, we do have DEX volumes. So DEX volumes on Hedera hit all-time highs in Q4, averaging about $10.7 million per day, representing a 530% quarter-over-quarter increase in average daily DEX volumes. Karate Combat users prefer using Hedera over Ethereum. Their events in Q4 actually saw an 81% of all Karate tokens played via the Hedera network. The total number of Karate played also increased as Karate Combat introduced the Hedera network to new users. And then, of course, Bonzo Finance launched at the end of October and closed Q4 with over $25 million in TVL. Bonzo Finance is an Avi V2-based non-custodial money market optimized to run on Hedera's EVM and natively utilizes Hedera's token service infrastructure. Hedera's stablecoin market capitalization also increased 272% quarter over quarter, closing Q4 at $37.9 million. Led by growth in natively issued USDC, stablecoins continue to make their way into DeFi on Hedera with over $3 million worth of USDC in Bonzo Finance alone. So again, we could see growth across the board. The big thing actually about HBAR's market cap is that we definitely did have a nice spike, even though there was a lot of tokens released. We also did have a very good price action, month around like November into December, as you guys can clearly see. I mean, we hit almost 40 cents back in January. I actually think that we did hit very close to, we actually did hit 40 cents. I thought that we hit about like 39 cents, but we actually did hit 40 cents. So it was a very good time for Hedera. In terms of the actual supply, I know that a lot of people will say like, oh, this is terrible that there's 42 billion out there. Guys, that means that there's less than 8 billion tokens left. This is a very small amount of supply left that's not in circulation, which means, we no longer have to really worry about inflation around the token, which is very bullish. Now, in terms of the actual token unlocks, we could see all of the unlocks that have happened, and we could see how much is remaining. Now, we don't actually have any upcoming just yet. I do think that we will most likely get those announcements from the HBAR Foundation as we usually do. But for the most part, we are getting closer and closer to having 100% of the supply fully released. But going back to the actual report, we could see some of the key metrics here in terms of like revenue. So the revenue in Q4 of 2024 was not the best. I mean, compared to like Q3, it was a significant drop in revenue. But year over year, the revenue did grow about 85.4%, which was pretty cool. And again, that's a very big positive thing because we want to see a lot more network revenue. Now, ending off with quarter four, the big drop was most likely due to the fact that the transactions on Hedera did drop significantly, and that was because of atma.io. But in terms of the average daily transactions, you could see the big difference here, from hundreds of millions to, 563,000. We need a lot more transactions, which would equal a lot more revenue for the network, which would also equal a lot more growth around HBAR and use of HBAR. But we also have DeFi TVL. The TVL in terms of DeFi has been very significant, and also the daily DEX volume has been also very significant, and stablecoin market cap increasing greatly. That's a big one because of how big stablecoins are becoming and how big they will be. On top of that, financial overview. Here we have the financial overview. Again, you can see the fully diluted value of the network increasing significantly, which is why I said, not only did we pump in price, but we also did see a lot more HBAR tokens released. In terms of market cap and revenue, you could see that the revenue and also the market cap did increase greatly throughout quarter four, which was very beneficial for, of course, Hedera and also HBAR holders. Here we have the USD revenue itself. Again, that did fall. And I think that that's very clear because of Atma and the lack of transactions. Now, this up here itself, this was actually the fully diluted market capitalization value and the circulating market capitalization, and that's in blue and green. But this is the actual USD revenue itself. It did decrease by 85%, which is not a good sign. We need to see a lot more, transactions on the network. And here we have the service revenue decreased as well in 92%. This is all because of Atma. So outside of that, we do look at the supply. So the report forecasts that the circulating supply will increase by just under 3.9 billion HBAR next quarter, which would be quarter one of this year. So far, we did already see that increase. Here we actually have the total amounts supply staked as well, and also the usage. So the usage in terms of like average active accounts grew 24% quarter over quarter to about 10,100 active accounts per day in quarter four, which, again, pretty good. I would like to see a lot more new accounts. Most likely we will see that when, something like karate gets massively adopted or, some sort of additional use case on the network. Overall, though, listen, the growth of Hedera has been very significant. We just want to see a lot more network engagement. Mainly, I'm looking at transactions, right? Like, you guys already know me. I've always said that Hedera needs to focus on transactable enterprise use cases. Until we actually see any significant use case on the network promoting massive amounts of network grade use, things are not going to be extremely significant for the network in terms of revenue creation. So far, the adoption around like retail use cases and the ecosystem growth, that's been great, but we want to see the revenue, which is here. We want to see this increase drastically. It's always been a focus of mine, and I've always said that Hedera definitely needs a lot more revenue generating use cases live on the network. We definitely look at enterprises because they are the ones that actually create massive amounts of demand. For an example, hundreds of millions of transactions, which if we did see hundreds of millions of transactions every single quarter, then the revenue would definitely be up there. But until then, I'm not expecting like any significant revenue on the network because mainly right now we're just really kind of looking at DeFi and retail use cases. But again, it's been a very good time to be an HBAR holder. And even in terms of like outside of network usage, in terms of like transactions, we're still doing pretty good compared to most other networks with over 500,000 plus network transactions in a single quarter. But outside of that, I'm really kind of looking at the usage of some of these apps like Karate Combat, for an example, and I'm also looking at DeFi growth and all that. And so far, everything looks pretty good around Hedera, and I do think that that's going to continue once we start to see the market bounce back in a bit. But also, don't forget HBAR ETFs. So I've been really kind of focused on the ETF side around Hedera because I do think that this is going to push HBAR significantly up the list on CMC, which also have a lot more eyes on Hedera. And I've always said once people start to realize in the benefits that Hedera does have to offer around DeFi, for an example, if somebody starts to utilize like lending or borrowing apps on Hedera, like Bonzo, for an example, they will realize how efficient Hedera is compared to these other networks like even Ethereum, and we'll start to see that big shift to Hedera from these other networks. And so far, we've already seen a wave of adoption happening around Hedera from popular networks like Solana and even Ethereum. But I think that it will actually continue once a lot more focus is put on Hedera. And I do think that does happen with something like ETFs, which are a huge catalyst. Now, also, big shout out to Generation Infinity, because really kind of building upon this, because this was the announcement that NASDAQ filed for the 19B4 to list and trade Grayscale's Hedera ETF. This is an update regarding that from the 17th. And we actually have breaking news, Federal Register document released today. NASDAQ proposes listing and trading Grayscale Hedera Trust HBAR shares under Rule 5711D, bringing HBAR into mainstream financial markets and treating it like other commodity-based products such as gold. This is a huge move. Why? Well, number one, NASDAQ. Guys, NASDAQ is an absolute giant, and the fact that they're proposing this also highlights the fact that HBAR does not have any concern regarding it being a security or a commodity. This would actually put that title on HBAR as it being a commodity, but also think about the mainstream, focus that HBAR would get from this. When we think about Wall Street, really kind of looking at this space in a positive way, this is a big sign of that. Even though it's Grayscale's HBAR trust here in question, it's still the fact that NASDAQ is moving forward on something like this to include it under that rule, which is a commodity-based trust shares. I'm very excited about this. I do believe that an HBAR ETF is going to be launching very soon. We are starting to see a lot of big moves happening around the SEC, and in a very positive way, by the way. Like, for an example, we just talked about XRP. The SEC basically dismissed the appeal, which is a huge move. It basically means that the case is, pretty much over. But they've been dropping case after case after case. This would be a big moment for HBAR if we did get these ETFs trading live. And also that would be a huge move for HBAR's overall trading volume. I think that it would spike the price. Obviously, it would be a huge move for HBAR. But I'm mainly looking at the adoption of Hedera and what it could mean for the entire ecosystem. Because again, we're still looking at the revenue. And we're still looking at the overall network. I mean, so far the growth across the board has been very significant outside of revenue and transactions, which I do think that they will also catch up to the network growth. It just needs a little bit more time. And you got to remember that the revenue is significantly low because of how affordable it is to transact on Hedera. So even though it is a negative thing, it's only negative because of how positive it is to actually transact on Hedera. But I still think that 2025 is going to be a massive year for Hedera. It's not even just about the ETFs. It's about the adoption, about the DeFi growth, around the ecosystem growth. Enterprise grade adoption, I think, is going to start to heat up in a big way. I actually do have a video planned around Hedera for tomorrow that I want to really kind of just address a few things happening, because we just witnessed some pretty big events that put a spotlight on a few big players around Hedera that are going to, I think, change the trajectory of, Hedera's adoption cycle, because we're going to start to see a big flood of major enterprise members of organizations that are already working with Hedera, confirmed to be working with Hedera, that are going to start to tap into DLT and blockchain, because it's 2025. And guess what's now being talked about from every single big player out there? It's blockchain, DLT. How can we implement it? How can we utilize it? It's on center stage with, the Trump admin going all in on crypto essentially as well. So I think it's only a matter of time until we start to see enterprise adoption heating up significantly, and networks like Hedera seeing a big shift in not only adoption, but also, utilization at scale, which is going to be the big game changer. So with that being said, I hope that you guys enjoyed this video. If you guys definitely leave a like, subscribe, turn notifications on because more free content. You guys are more than welcome to follow me on Twitter and join the free Discord in the description below. And with that being said, guys, it's been Nick. Thanks for watching. Peace out.